The woman I loved was carrying our child and sleeping with the man next door. I thought I was building a family, turns out I was living a lie. My name's Jason, and for the past 5 years I've been married to Emily. We first crossed paths in college, one of those classic whirlwind-type romances that you see in movies. She had this spark, smart, charming, with this infectious energy that made people naturally gravitate toward her. Folks used to call us that couple, the one others admired, even envied a little. Or so I believed. Things started to feel off a few months back. Emily's job has always been demanding. She's a corporate lawyer, which means long nights and nonstop pressure. But I respected that about her. We had our routine, and I never questioned the late evenings or the occasional business trip. But lately she feels distant. Not like she's physically gone, but more like her heart's been somewhere else. She's been finding more and more excuses to be out, grabbing coffee, taking these long solo walks to clear her head. She blames it on the pregnancy, says the hormones are making her anxious, and I get that. I really do. I wanted to trust what she was telling me. But sometimes, when she heads out for yet another walk at dusk, I catch myself wondering if it's not the house she's escaping, but someone else. Then there was last weekend. Emily's always enjoyed shopping, but lately it's turned into a weekly ritual. She'll disappear for hours, saying she's looking for baby clothes or just getting some fresh air. Normally she'd come home brimming with excitement, eager to show me tiny socks or another adorable onesie. But now, she just walks in quietly, drops the bags in the closet before I even get a peek. When I ask how it went, she gives me these vague, tired replies. It was fine, then disappears into the other room. I try not to overthink it. I tell myself to breathe, to focus on the fact that we're expecting a child, that life is shifting in a huge way. A few weeks ago, Emily decided to start working from home. Said the pressure from her job wasn't good for the baby. I completely supported it. It felt like the right move, anything for her and the baby's health. Then came yesterday. It was one of those rare days at work where everything wrapped up early, and I figured, why not surprise her? I even stopped to pick up her favorite jasmine tea on the way home. Just a small, thoughtful gesture, like the kind we used to share before life got so complicated. When I walked through the front door, I never expected to see what I saw. Emily was at the kitchen table, and sitting across from her was a man I'd never seen before. He looked to be in his late 30s, casually dressed, holding a cup of tea like he belonged there. The sight stopped me cold. They were sitting close, talking quietly, but the second I stepped inside, their conversation just halted. Emily looked up and greeted me with this overly calm, practiced smile. "Oh, hey," she said like nothing was out of place. But the air was thick with something unsaid. The man nodded politely at me, still silent, still sipping his tea like this was all perfectly normal. I kept my voice steady as best I could. "Who's this?" Without missing a beat, Emily answered, "This is Dr. Mitchell." She waved a hand in his direction like that explained everything. I wasn't feeling too well today, just some pregnancy stuff, so I gave him a call. "Didn't want to stress you out." I stared at her, trying to read between the lines on her face. She didn't look sick at all, no paleness, no discomfort. In fact, she looked more refreshed than usual. Something wasn't adding up. Emily's never been the type to call a doctor over for minor issues, and certainly not without mentioning it to me. I nodded slowly, but my gut was screaming. "You didn't call your OB?" She smiled again, too smoothly. "No, Mitchell's an old friend from law school. He was in the area, so I figured why not." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something about how casual this guy was in my kitchen, sipping tea and chatting quietly with my wife while I was supposed to be at work, it just didn't feel right. Not even a little. He left shortly after, and the whole interaction lingered in the air like smoke. After he was gone, I asked again if she was feeling okay. She shrugged it off with a quick, "Yeah, I'm better now." And that was the end of the conversation. Or at least that's what she wanted it to be. But that moment, it just wouldn't leave me. I couldn't understand why Emily would reach out to a doctor and not even think to mention it to me. And if she really had felt unwell, why did she seem completely fine? The whole thing didn't add up, no matter how many ways I tried to rationalize it. After that strange visit from Dr. Mitchell, things seemed to settle back into their usual rhythm, or at least I told myself they had. Emily never brought him up again, and I didn't push. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe I was just tired and letting my imagination get ahead of me. Still, every once in a while, my mind would wander back to that afternoon. To the way she smiled a little too easily. To how composed she looked. To why she'd called him specifically instead of her regular doctor. None of it made sense. And then came last weekend. It was a quiet Saturday. Emily had curled up on the couch with a novel, legs tucked beneath her, lost in the pages. I figured it was a good chance to get some things done around the house. With the baby on the way, I'd been trying to step up more. Cleaning wasn't really my thing, but I'd been putting in more effort lately. So, I decided to tackle the bedroom, vacuuming, dusting, straightening up. While I was sorting through the nightstand drawer, I found something that stopped me cold. Hidden underneath some papers was an empty condom wrapper. Just sitting there like it had been forgotten. I froze. My heart started pounding in my chest. We hadn't used protection in. I couldn't even remember how long. With the pregnancy, there hadn't been any need. My first reaction was panic. The worst kind of panic. But I tried to calm myself. Maybe it was old, something that had slipped through during the last big clean. Maybe it was mine from a long time ago and it just got overlooked. People forget things. That could happen, right? Still, I stood there, staring at it, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But in my gut, something twisted. Something told me it wasn't a leftover from the past. Not with how strange Emily had been acting lately. Not after that unexplained visit from Dr. Mitchell. I didn't want to make accusations without knowing the truth. I'm not the kind of man who jumps to conclusions. But I needed clarity. I needed answers. And that's when I made a difficult choice. I bought a small camera online. One of those discreet ones you can hide easily. I know how that sounds. It felt wrong. Like I was betraying her trust. But I couldn't keep living in this constant cloud of doubt. I needed to know if I was losing my mind or if there was really something happening right in front of me. I set it up quietly in our bedroom, tucked into a corner where it had a clear view but wasn't noticeable. Emily didn't notice anything different. And that only made me feel worse. But at the same time, I felt like I didn't have any other option. All I could do then was wait. Wait and hope that what I suspected was all just in my head. That I was wrong. Because if I wasn't... A week went by and the tension only got worse. Every time Emily smiled at me, every time she brushed past me or talked about the baby, I felt like I was holding a secret I didn't want. But I knew I couldn't keep pretending. I had to look. One night after she'd gone to bed, I sat down at my desk, pulled the memory card from the camera and braced myself. My hands were shaking as I loaded the footage. At first, everything looked normal. Just her moving around, folding clothes, scrolling through her phone, lying on the bed. The kind of footage I was almost relieved to see. I skimmed through hours of it, clinging to the hope that maybe I really had been wrong. Then, on the third day, something changed. The clip started with Emily entering the bedroom and right away I could tell she was different. There was a softness to her face I hadn't seen in weeks. She stood at the mirror, fixing her hair, smoothing her dress. Then a few minutes later, Jake, our neighbor, stepped into the frame. Jake. He walked into our bedroom like he belonged there. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just comfort. I felt the floor drop out from under me. I paused the video, my hands still shaking. Jake. Of all people. I'd known him for years. He was the friendly guy next door. Helped shovel snow off the driveway in the winter. Borrowed tools from me now and then. And here he was, in my home, in our bedroom. I hit play again. Emily didn't even speak to him when he came in. They moved around each other like they'd done this before. No awkwardness. No pause. And then they both climbed into our bed. Our bed. That image burned itself into my brain. And in that moment, everything I'd been trying to deny, all the doubts I'd been pushing aside, they came crashing in like a wave. I sat there staring at the screen and felt something in me break. I tried skipping through the footage, hoping, desperately, that maybe I was wrong. Maybe this was some bizarre misunderstanding. But the more I watched, the harder it became to deny the truth. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was a pattern. Day after day, like clockwork, Jake showed up at our door not long after I left for work. Sometimes he came by mid-morning, other times in the afternoon. Never at night. Never when I was around. He knew exactly when to come, and more painfully, Emily knew exactly when I'd be gone. It was always the same. He'd walk in like it was the most natural thing in the world. Emily never seemed nervous or unsure. She didn't peek through the blinds. She didn't rush. She didn't look over her shoulder. She was calm, collected, completely confident I wouldn't be home. And the two of them barely talked. They didn't need to. The silence between them said more than words ever could. It was the kind of silence you only see when something has gone on for a while. When it's become a routine. And then in our bed they slept together. Over and over again. I sat there, eyes glued to the screen, watching the woman I married, the woman carrying our child, do this with a man I thought of as nothing more than a neighbor. With every new clip, my stomach twisted tighter. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a brief moment of weakness. It was deliberate, rehearsed, comfortable. Every afternoon while I was out working trying to build a future for our family, she was opening our home, and our bed, to someone else. I kept thinking about the nights she told me she was too tired, that the pregnancy was wearing her out. How she'd turn away from me and close her eyes, and I'd lie there thinking I was doing something wrong. Meanwhile, Jake had been here. Every day. I felt like I was going to be sick. I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed the laptop shut, but the images kept replaying in my mind. Emily, Jake, the bed we shared, the silence between them. My heart was pounding, but my entire body felt cold. I sat there, staring at nothing, the weight of it all pressing down so hard I could barely breathe. And then, something inside me snapped. All the pain, the betrayal, the disbelief, it boiled over into rage. I stood up and grabbed the chair I'd been sitting in, throwing it across the room. It smashed into the desk with a loud crack, sending books and papers flying. But I didn't stop. I slammed my fists into the walls, tore down shelves, ripped frames off the walls. Photos from our wedding, vacations, baby announcements, all of them shattered on the floor. I was tearing apart everything we had built. Every memory felt poisoned. The room was a mess of broken furniture and fragments of our past. And still it didn't feel like enough. Finally, I collapsed onto the floor, breathing hard, my hands scraped and trembling. I looked down and saw the memory card, the one that held the proof of everything, lying near my feet. I picked it up, clutching it so tightly the edges dug into my skin. It was well past midnight. I didn't care. Emily was asleep in the bedroom, our bedroom, oblivious to the storm she had caused. I walked down the hallway, still shaking, still burning with fury. When I reached the door, I didn't hesitate. I pushed it open with a crash. Emily stirred, startled. She sat up, her eyes still foggy with sleep. "Jason?" she murmured. "What's going on?" "It's the middle of the night." I didn't say a word at first. I just stood there, glaring at her, the betrayal rising in my chest like a tidal wave. She rubbed her eyes, confused. "Jason." I walked to the bed and threw the memory card down, letting it land on the blanket between us. "You tell me," I said, my voice sharp and loud, echoing in the room. "What is this?" She looked at it, her expression shifting from confusion to alarm. What is that?" she asked, her voice starting to shake. I took a step closer, my hands still trembling. "You think I'm blind?" I said, my voice cracking with anger. "You really thought I'd never find out? Every single day while I've been at work, you've been sneaking him in here. Jake, our neighbor." Her face turned pale. Her mouth opened slightly like she wanted to speak, but nothing came out. "I saw it all," I went on, my voice rising again. "The way you smiled at him. The way you let him into our house like it was his. Into our bedroom. Our bed." "Jason, she tried to start, but I cut her off. "Don't," I said, stepping back. "Don't even try." I was pacing now, trying to hold myself together. "I watched the footage. Every second. You didn't even hesitate. And all that time I was working, thinking you were here, carrying our child, faithful. And you were with him." Her eyes filled with tears, but they meant nothing to me anymore. She reached out, her hand trembling as if to touch me. "Jason, please." "Don't," I snapped, stepping back as the words tore from my throat. "Don't you dare touch me." My voice was shaking, not from weakness, but from the weight of everything I'd just discovered. "How long, Emily?" I demanded, my voice cracked and raw. "How long have you been doing this?" She broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. But I didn't care. Not this time. I wasn't interested in explanations or half-truths or apologies. None of it could fix what had already been shattered. "I trusted you," I said, quieter now, but my words were razor-sharp. "I believed in you. I stood by you. And every single day you lied to my face." Emily's cries filled the room, but I felt nothing for them. Whatever sympathy I once had for her was gone, stripped away by every lie, every betrayal. I couldn't stay there. Not in that room. Not in that house where everything felt tainted. The walls were too tight, the air too heavy. I turned and walked out, leaving her alone in the mess, the wreckage of our room, our marriage, everything I once held sacred. By morning I hadn't slept at all. Not even a minute. My mind just wouldn't stop. I kept seeing those images, Emily and Jake, again and again, like a cruel reel I couldn't turn off. But something inside me had shifted. The anger was colder now. More focused. Emily stayed hidden away in the bedroom, and I let her. I didn't want to hear her voice. I didn't care what she had to say. Today wasn't about her. It was about him. I didn't go to work. How could I pretend things were normal? No. Today I waited. The house was so quiet it felt unreal, like even the walls were holding their breath. I sat in the living room, eyes locked on the front door, heart pounding, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. The hours crawled by, each one adding to the tension building inside me. Jake had no idea I was home. No clue what was coming. Emily didn't say a word, she knew better now. I'd made it clear. No texts, no warnings, no chances. Jake thought it was going to be just another visit. But this time the welcome would be different. Then I heard it, footsteps on the porch. My pulse quickened. I stood up slowly, every muscle tight, my chest rising with each deep breath. Then the doorbell rang. I walked to the door, steady as stone, and swung it open. There he was, Jake, standing there with that smug little smile, ready for his routine. But the moment he saw me, his face went pale. "Well, this is a surprise," I said, my voice low and calm, the kind of calm that comes before a storm. He didn't know what to say. His mouth opened slightly, caught off guard. Before he could even get a word out, I stepped forward and swung. My fist connected hard with his jaw, knocking him back off the porch. He stumbled, falling to the ground, scrambling to get up. "You think you can just walk into my house?" I roared, coming down the steps after him. "You think you can sleep with my wife and just smile in my face like nothing happened?" Jake threw up his hands defensively, panicked. "Jason, wait, it's not what I think?" I barked, hitting him again. "I saw everything. You were here. Every single day. In my bed." He was trying to talk, stammering something, but I wasn't listening. I didn't want explanations. I didn't want lies. I wanted him to feel just a fraction of what I'd been carrying. "This wasn't some accident," I growled, grabbing his shirt and dragging him up. "You were with her. Over and over. And you think you can just walk away from this?" "I'm sorry," he choked, his voice trembling. "I didn't mean for this to happen." "You didn't mean to destroy my life?" I spat, staring him down. "You didn't mean to crawl into my house, into my marriage, while I was out building a life she pretended to care about?" He looked terrified, bleeding, broken, and I didn't care. I shoved him back hard. "Get out of here," I said through clenched teeth, "before I do something I can't take back." Jake stumbled to his feet, clutching his face, and ran, limping, not daring to glance over his shoulder. Behind me the front door creaked. I didn't need to turn around to know it was Emily. She stood there in the doorway, pale and silent, watching the aftermath play out. But there was nothing left to say. Not to him. Not to her. It was over. I stood at the edge of the porch, watching Jake disappear down the street, my chest still heaving, fists still clenched. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, but the pain, that stayed. A dull, heavy ache that settled deep into my bones. Everything I thought I knew was gone. I turned back toward the house, the fury still boiling just beneath the surface. The front door had been left ajar, and I could see Emily standing there in the hallway, her eyes wide with fear. She had watched the whole thing unfold. And yet she said nothing. She just stood there, motionless, as if unsure whether I was going to turn that anger toward her next. I stepped inside, slamming the door behind me with a force that echoed through the house. The silence between us was thick, oppressive. Emily's lips trembled like she wanted to speak, but I didn't want to hear it. Not now. Not ever. I took a slow step forward, each movement deliberate, my voice cold and sharp as broken glass. "Why are you still here?" She blinked, startled, clearly not expecting those words. There was a flicker of disbelief in her eyes, maybe even denial, like she hadn't fully grasped that this was really happening. I didn't give her time to think. "Why aren't you packing your things?" I snapped, my voice rising, making her flinch. "Go on, grab your stuff. Get out. Go find Jake if that's what you want so badly." Her eyes welled with fresh tears, and she instinctively wrapped her arms around herself, as if bracing for what was coming next. "Jason, please," she whispered, barely audible. "Don't," I barked, stepping closer, my voice raw and shaking with rage. "Don't stand there and please me. You think there's anything you can say right now that's going to undo this? That's going to erase what you've done." She broke down again, sobbing harder. But I didn't feel pity, not after everything she'd kept from me. Not after what I'd seen. "I trusted you," I said, quieter now but with just as much fire. "I believed in you. I believed we were building a life, together. While you were sneaking around behind my back, carrying my child and letting him into our home like it was his." She was crying uncontrollably now, but I wasn't moved. I was tired. Drained. Beyond anything an apology could reach. "Start packing," I said flatly. "Go upstairs and start packing. I want you out of this house by the end of the day." She didn't move. For a moment she just stared at me like she was frozen in place. But then, slowly she nodded. Her shoulders dropped, and without a word she turned and walked upstairs, disappearing into what used to be our life. I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the echo of what had just happened. The house, once filled with laughter and plans and love, now felt hollow, cold. Like all the warmth had been sucked out with a single truth. It was over. And this time for good. Months went by. The pain didn't vanish, but it dulled, slowly. The silence in the house was both a curse and a comfort. It was lonely, yes, but it was honest. The kind of quiet that didn't hide betrayal in the corners. I poured myself into work. Into fixing up the house. Into anything that could distract me from the mess that had become my life. But no matter how hard I tried, there was always one thought I couldn't outrun. The baby? I didn't know how to feel. I tried to push the thought away. I told myself it was too much, too complicated. With everything Emily had done, with the lies and the cheating, I couldn't be sure if the child she carried was even mine. And the truth? I wasn't sure if I had the strength to find out. Then one day, out of nowhere, I got a message. It was from Emily's sister, Megan. We hadn't spoken since everything went down. Her name on my phone felt like a ghost from a past I'd been trying to bury. I hesitated. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. There was no text, just a photo. A newborn baby boy, swaddled in a hospital blanket, his tiny face scrunched up, eyes shut tight like he was bracing for the world. And the second I saw him, I stopped breathing. He looked just like me. Same nose. Same chin. That unmistakable look that didn't need a DNA test to confirm anything. He was mine. Then the message came through, simple and direct. Jason, I thought you should see this. You need to know he's yours. I stared at that photo for what felt like forever, unable to look away. My emotions were all over the place. Shock, sadness, disbelief. But more than anything, something shifted deep inside me. That little boy, he was mine. There was no question in my heart. I didn't need a paternity test. I saw myself in his eyes, his mouth, the shape of his face. He wasn't Jake's. He was mine. And just like that, everything changed. I knew right then what I had to do. I wasn't going to sit back and let Emily raise him, not after what she'd done. Not after everything I'd seen. She had already shown me what she was capable of. The lies, the cheating, the cold calculation. There was no way I was going to let her raise my son and pretend like she was some kind of devoted mother. He deserved better. I was going to fight for custody. No matter how long it took. No matter what it cost me. The divorce was already in motion, but now it had become more than just dividing furniture or signing papers. Now it was about a future. His future. I pulled together everything I had. The videos, the messages, every detail of her betrayal. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it because I believed with everything in me that she was no longer fit to be a mother, not to my child. I found a lawyer, a tough one, and we got to work. We built a case that told the whole story. How she carried on with Jake even while pregnant. How she lied to me every single day. It was all there in black and white. When the custody trial began, I walked into that courtroom with my heart pounding. Emily was there, of course, looking like she always had, put together, polished, but I saw through it. I saw the cracks, the wear and tear behind her eyes. Time, truth, and guilt had worn her down. My attorney laid it all out. The affair, the deception, the emotional damage. He painted a picture that was hard to look away from. A woman who had put her own needs first, even at the cost of her family. I didn't hold anything back because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about protecting my son. Emily fought back, tried to defend herself. She cried on the stand. Claimed it had been a mistake. Said it didn't define her as a mother. But the court saw the same things I did. The secrecy, the recklessness, the selfishness. And slowly I could feel the tide turning. There were moments in that courtroom when I could see that baby's face in my mind, just like in the photo Megan had sent me. So small. So innocent. He didn't ask to be born into this disaster. He didn't deserve to pay the price for Emily's decisions. He needed a steady home. He needed someone who would always put him first. And I would be that person. The day the judge announced the decision changed my life forever. I sat there holding my breath as the verdict came down. Custody awarded to me. For the first time in what felt like years, I could finally breathe again. The relief was like a wave crashing over me. It wasn't about winning, it was about justice. About doing what was right. I had stood up for my son, and now I had the chance to raise him the way he deserved. I glanced over at Emily. She sat frozen, her hands folded, her expression hollow. She looked like a shell of the woman I used to know. Whatever strength she had once drawn from her image, it was gone now. Her lawyer leaned in to say something, but she didn't react. She just stared blankly, her world slowly falling apart. For a moment, something inside me stirred, maybe a flicker of sympathy. but it faded fast. I couldn't forget what she had done. The betrayal. The lies. The months of pretending while she carried our child and saw another man behind my back. No, she didn't get my pity. She had made her choices. As I walked out of the courthouse, my lawyer beside me, I felt something new for the first time in a long time. Peace. It wasn't happiness, not yet. But it was the first step toward it. I was going to be a father. A real one. The kind who showed up. The kind who told the truth, who kept his promises. My son would grow up in a home filled with love, not secrets. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Even with the ruling in my favor, life didn't magically fall into place. Emily was gone now, and despite all the pain she caused, her absence echoed through the house. Her presence had been constant for years, even in her worst moments. Now there was just quiet. And in that quiet, I realized how much of myself I'd sacrificed trying to save a marriage that had been slipping away long before I ever saw the truth. But for the first time, I wasn't holding on to something broken. I was building something new. And it started with my son. As for Emily, the fallout wasn't just emotional, it was social, personal, and deeply public. In a town as small as ours, word travels fast. People heard about the trial, about the affair, about everything that came out in court. Her image, the one she worked so hard to build, shattered in front of everyone. I heard through a mutual friend that she'd moved in with her sister for a while. Even her own family didn't seem to know what to do with her. She wasn't the same woman anymore, not the one I married, and not even the version she tried to pretend to be during the custody battle. She had lost her home, her husband, and, most painful of all, her son. After the trial, I barely heard from her. She reached out a few times through her lawyer, asking for visitation. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. Maybe someday when our son is old enough to understand, I'll have to explain everything. But right now, I just want to focus on being the kind of father he can rely on. There were quiet nights where doubt crept in, when I'd sit alone and wonder if I had made the right choice. If separating him from his mother, no matter her flaws, would come back to hurt him down the road. But then I'd look at him, my son, my little boy, and I knew I had done the right thing. He deserved a home built on trust, not deceit. And I was going to give him that. One night, I stood over his crib watching him sleep. His chest rose and fell with those soft, peaceful breaths only babies have. In that moment, something clicked. I hadn't just fought a legal battle, I'd fought for his peace, his safety, his future. No matter what it cost me emotionally, it was worth it. Emily's absence was a price we both paid, but as I watched him dream that night, I knew it had been the right call. For a while, life seemed to settle. I fell into a new rhythm. The silence in the house was no longer heavy, it was calming. We were healing. But that peace didn't last. One morning while I was walking past the front window, I froze. Outside, across the street, I saw Emily unloading boxes into Jake's house. My heart sank. There she was, laughing with him like they hadn't just destroyed a family together. I watched in disbelief as she carried her life into the same house where our marriage had been buried. For a few moments I stood still, stunned. The anger came fast, but I didn't let it explode this time. I knew better. She could do what she wanted with her life, but she wasn't going to pull mine back into the chaos she'd created. That day I knew we had to leave. I couldn't raise my son across the street from that. I wouldn't. I called a real estate agent that afternoon. Looked through listings, called moving companies. It all happened quickly. And it felt right, like I was finally reclaiming something I'd lost. Control. Word must have reached Emily because a few days later, there was a knock at my door. Loud. Demanding. I already knew who it was. I opened it to see her standing there, furious. "Jason, what are you doing?" she snapped. "You're leaving?" Just like that. I met her eyes without blinking. "It's none of your business," I said flatly. "I'm doing what's best for our son. Something you should have thought about a long time ago." Her face twisted with frustration. "You can't just take him. He belongs here, this is his home." "No," I said calmly. "This is where you brought him into a nightmare. I'm getting him out of it." She stepped forward, trying to push the conversation, maybe even push her way back in. "Jason, we need to talk about this." But I was done being manipulated. I looked her straight in the eyes, said nothing, and slammed the door. That sound, the door shutting between us, was the last thing I needed to feel closure. A few weeks later, the house was sold, the boxes packed, and my son and I were on the road to our new life. It wasn't a mansion, it wasn't flashy, but it was ours. A small, cozy house in a quiet neighborhood where no one knew our past. No stares, no whispers. Just a blank slate. And in that stillness, something amazing started to happen. We began to heal. Each morning, I woke up to the sound of his giggles. I burned breakfast most days, but he didn't mind. We took walks through the park, read the same books at bedtime, and filled the house with new memories, ones that had nothing to do with lies or betrayal. The bitterness slowly faded. I stopped being the man who had been cheated on, lied to, broken. I was just a dad. A good one. A present one. And that was all I ever wanted to be. Sometimes Emily still tries to reach out. A letter from a lawyer. A message through a family member. But I don't respond. Not yet. One day I'll have to tell my son everything. But that day will come when he's ready, not when she is. The past? It'll always be part of my story. But it doesn't define who I am anymore. My son, his laugh, his wonder, his love, that's my story now. Watching him take his first steps across the living room floor, arms outstretched, eyes bright, I knew we had finally made it to the other side. We were free. And this is our beginning.